because it's not just one incident that happens to a person who decides to die. It's many, many. And you can see that this glass is almost full. Usually what it is that tips it over for the person to decide, this is it, I've had it, I'm not doing this anymore, is this little bit more.
You look like a perfect fit.
Our adolescent years are filled with new and complex emotions. The anxiety and thrill of getting your driver's license, the excitement of going to prom, and the anticipation of graduation. And while many of these experiences are a source of happiness, the journey through adolescence also has a share of struggles: depression, peer pressure, bullying, substance abuse. It can be a tough road to travel, and unfortunately it can lead some teens to make some drastic and irreversible decisions: suicide. Each year, 30,000 Americans take their own lives, and with teenagers, it's the third leading cause of death. For one woman, this statistic became a horrifying reality. Mary Smith, a retired educator in Whitfield County, had to do one thing a parent fears: burying their own child.
My son, Blake Smith, he was born several years ago. I think he'd be 34 now. And he was a delightful child. Sure, he had his little quirks like every other child, but he was a lot of fun. Someone who knew him well when he was little said he was just one of the most appealing children that she'd ever met, and that was a high compliment as a mother to hear. Blake was very active. When he was little, he was able to, we have a home with a pond and fish in it, and he was able to, at a very young age, catch the biggest fish or be very active. So he was athletic from the time he was quite young. He played t-ball and baseball and all those different kinds of things, soccer, basketball one year, and then later on he was in wrestling, but football was his biggest sport. So athletics was very, very important to him, and he was active. I'd say that if you described him, he would have been a clown. He made people laugh, and he was just a lot of fun to be around. Sure, he had his moods, and he wasn't always an angel, but people seemed to like him. Kids seemed to like him, and adults did too. So his life growing up didn't seem particularly different from anybody else. We were an intact family. He had an older sister, and then my husband and I were with him, and his father was very involved with his athletics. At first I worked for Whitfield County Schools and then later Dalton Schools. So he was around school people a lot, and he was very, very much loved by grandparents and other people. Probably when he was in high school, maybe junior or senior year, I think kids begin to experiment a little bit with alcohol and just kind of crazy things, parties. And I think that was kind of a beginning for him with some risky behavior. A lot of his friends, maybe after games or on weekends or whatever. When he graduated from high school, he went on to college. And I think when he started off to college, he was at a party school, and he really got into his freedom at that time. So after he'd been there one semester, he decided he needed some more time at home, and he started at Dalton State, and then he also was working. But some things happened in his life. He had some issues with a girlfriend. He began to have some anger issues, and I expect that maybe some of the use of alcohol and some of the dissatisfaction with his life might have been a problem for him. Because what we find is that if you have high expectations for yourself and then you don't follow through with what you wanted with your life, it makes it really, really hard because you want to do well, and then you're disappointed with yourself. So that's really important to remember, that even if you're disappointed with what you're doing, keep on going, ask for the support that you need, and find some positive ways to help yourself rather than going downhill. Blake had some good opportunities. Again, he was well liked, but his risk-taking behavior, and I can't say that enough, probably lent itself to making life even harder for him. So he did make some poor choices.
Girl in need.
We were finding that he wasn't looking toward success nearly as much. And I think what happens to people is that a series of events over a period of time makes it possible for them to feel like, you know what, this just isn't worth it. I'm having to work too hard, I'm having to fight too hard, and maybe life just isn't worth it. So Blake a couple of times felt that way, and he did threaten that life just wasn't worth living anymore. But some people will end their lives impulsively, and what I mean by that is on impulse. They just decide, just like that, this is it. The next day they might have changed their minds. And I think that's what Blake did. And he was trying to get things back on track with himself, and had a fight with his girlfriend that day, and he just lost it. And for him, that was the last drop in the cup. That was the last time that he was willing to fight this battle any longer. And he decided, after a series of events that were pretty traumatic, to end his life. And when you think about that, you've got a young man who had all the potential in the world, who could have been very helpful to people. He was always somebody who helped other people. But over a period of time, that changed. And so in that one impulsive moment, Blake made the decision very quickly to end it all and to not live any longer. And what he did was make a permanent solution out of something that was temporary, something that might have been fixable. And that's what happens to other people too. For whatever the reason, they decide that life isn't worth it anymore, and it's too hard for them.
People do commit suicide in every community. It is something that happens. It would be wonderful if we could know who those people are that are thinking about hurting themselves in this way, and if someone could intervene with some treatment. I think something we can do in our community is education and awareness about depression and about suicide. If we could somehow get the message out more to the community that there is treatment available, and that we should also be aware of each other and be aware of talking to the people around us that we know, that we're friends with. And if we suspect that someone is deeply depressed or actually thinking about hurting themselves or committing suicide, that we can intervene. So awareness and education about the issues is very important.
A friend of mine said that she thought about the poem, "The World is Too Much With Us." And I think that's what happened to Blake. The world was just too much for him at that point in his life. So he couldn't do it anymore. And he didn't ask for the help that he needed. He didn't accept the help that he needed.
Sail away with me, honey. Put my heart in your hand. Sail away with me, honey, now. winter howling